PG, you made this?
Glamorous six-figure salary. Got not one, not two, but 3 degrees. Executive title at my corporation. Prestigious Ivy degree, top education. Turned on the TV, had a long day at work. Police brutality, protests, everyone berserk. Had to turn it off, too much to see. I thought it might be more productive if I read. What's this, Prosperity Now? Posted a new report? Oh, it's about black people, this definitely can't fall short. The road to zero wealth, that's an interesting title. But if it's about my people and money, it's vital. Uh-oh, yet another negative note. They're saying by 2053 we'll all be broke. By 2053, the median worth of black Americans is set to be murked. Hold up, back up, let me explain wealth. It's more than nice cars, a big house, and good health. You wanna learn more? You better stick around. Zero net worth by 53's not going down.
Started from the bottom, got a slow start. Now we're getting educated, trying to spend our money smart. Let's disprove this news that's so saddening. And make sure by 2053 it's not happening. Started from the bottom, got a slow start. Now we're getting educated, trying to spend our money smart. Let's disprove this news that's so saddening. And make sure by 2053 it's not happening.
My name is Amira Provide-Yizer. I'm a corporate finance attorney at Sidley Austin LLP, which is a corporate law firm located in Midtown Manhattan. And in case you're new to the 2053 fam, which stands for Financially Aware Members, 2053 Edutainment is a podcast and show owned by Amijo Productions Incorporated, designed to educate urban America on how to build wealth, how to learn about finance, and increase their net worth. It was created out of inspiration from the Road to Zero Wealth article published by Prosperity Now and the Institute for Policy Studies, which claimed the median wealth of Black Americans will fall to zero. Yes, zero, by 2053 if current trends continue. Each episode is based on a financial topic where we discuss the matter based on our personal experience, our work experience, and the latest research. We'd usually meet in person, but due to the pandemic, this episode will be virtual. It's a conversational panel-style environment where I'll moderate and lead the discussion on various subjects related to the episode's topic. But enough about us. Let's get to the show. Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the 4th episode of this 4-part series about navigating a career in finance with 2053 Edutainment.
Hey, man.
Hey.
Man, I sure do feel blessed to have a career in finance. 2053 really helped me understand some of the obstacles we will face as we grow in our career as Black professionals too, but I am still having some trouble with managing my personal finances.
I completely understand. When I was in your position as a junior finance professional, I was so happy with the salary that I spent way too much and ended up with more debt than when I started.
Exactly. With all the added expenses I have with high rent, student loan payments, credit card bills, and my other living expenses, I feel like even with this great job, I'm barely breaking even.
I get it. Well, I can honestly say that I have gotten better with managing my personal finances with each year that I have worked, but I still feel like there is so much more I can do to improve and prepare for the long term with investing, saving for retirement, and sticking to a budget.
Let's tune into 2053 to see what they recommend. They are so good at providing tips on improving financially and building wealth.
As you can deduce from what you just heard, the 4th episode of this 4-part series is about how, as a finance professional, you can use your income, or as a professional in general, to invest and grow your money outside of the workplace and for your future. Here to help us continue the discussion are Jared Dawson, an associate at Morgan Stanley, and Devon Smith, an analyst. So a quick stat, even though African Americans obviously make a significant economic contribution in the US, their financial wellness lags. And the intent of this show is to improve financial wellness, literacy, information in an entertaining and interesting way. And a 2019 report from George Washington University, they did what's called a PFIN index, which measures 8 key areas of financial knowledge. So earning, consuming, saving, investing. Then number 5 is borrowing and managing debt. Number 6 is insuring. Number 7 is comprehending risk and uncertainty. And then 8 is knowing go-to information sources you should use to learn about financial literacy. So outside of the workplace, you guys have to spend your money. What do you personally do to improve your financial literacy?
From my sense, financial literacy is definitely something that I've always, not always, but in terms of, I've definitely taken it very serious, of course, from a young age. And in terms of ways that I go about educating myself, you can go like the book routes. There are like some traditional books that like from an early young age, it'll teach you like some fundamental principles of savings, ways that there's some very basic functions in terms of like compound interest. That you really want to learn from a young age, because the sooner you start saving and investing, the better off you'll be. And I think something that's really important about financial literacy, and I think what often missed for a lot of individuals, is that financial literacy, such a large component of it is, in that what you're really trying to figure out is how can you build these healthy habits that you want to continue on a very consistent basis. It's not something you do one time. It's not say, hey, I saved $100 here, I'm done, right? So it's really, what are ways in which you can really develop habits and mannerisms that are consistent, and which ways you can build a better future for yourself, your family, and you ultimately achieve the goals that you set out for yourself. Okay. Now, what those vehicles are, it's going to depend a lot on what an individual's specific risk appetite is. So if you do have an appetite for, let's say, if you want to lean more towards the risky side, there are definitely like stocks, options, bonds, not bonds, stocks, options that you can definitely lean towards in order to try and maximize your returns. But ultimately, you have to really recognize that while you could potentially see a greater upside, there's also the potential that you could potentially lose the entire principal or the entire initial investment that you put up. So I think it's just really establishing and really understanding what it is your risk appetite is, and really trying to form those consistent habits.
Okay.
Yeah, I think consistency is key, as Jared mentioned. There are so many resources out there nowadays with the powerful internet that allow you to really look at, savings plans, or figuring out ways to really allocate capital to ensure that your future goals are met. And so I think for me, as somebody who's only 2 years out of college, really, getting my feet under me and understanding, how much to put away every year, how much to, spend on rent every month, and all those good things are important, aspects of growing up and becoming an adult. And I think, a lot of people do get carried away in the financial services world, where they're like, okay, I'm making X amount of dollars, I should spend 50% of my income on rent. And you're like, that's not what you should do. That is not the best way to save money, and you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck if you keep doing that. And so I think that there are different ways, and you have to figure out the plan that's best for you. But a lot of people try and follow just like, okay, I'm going to save 30% of my salary every year, or 40% or 50, whatever the number is that's comfortable for you. You figure out what your monthly expenses are, and figure out how you can put away the remaining value on a monthly basis, and hopefully generate enough capital to ultimately invest that into something. A lot of times, what we see is people just throw all their money in a savings account. Your savings account is giving you, 10 basis points of interest. It's not substantial in terms of ultimate,
for our audience,
return on capital. Exactly. And it doesn't.
It's 1/100th of a percent.
Right.
So if you 0.01. You said 10? Oh, 10. So 10 basis points is 0.1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
0.1. Yeah.
And so even then, and that might even be high for some savings accounts, but either way, that is not a substantial amount of interest to be, to have your money just sitting there. It's much better to put it in the stocks, the options, the bonds, or figure out if there's a real estate investment that can yield some sort of positive cash flow for you, post leverage. And there's all these ways that you can figure out how to be financially savvy. You just have to look online and read and leverage your friends and family as much to the best of your abilities to try and generate substantial wealth, not only for yourself but also for those who come after you. So
yeah, and now I'm going to be harsh on our people and say we're not back in the 1800s where we didn't have access to certain books and couldn't be taught to read, and we have the internet, which is free in a lot of cases if you go to the library. So why do you think that in our community financial literacy is still something we lag so far behind in?
So I think I have thought about this issue a lot, and it's not that, and at times I don't know if it's necessarily, when I think financial literacy, there are definitely certain levels to it, right? Because I do think members of the African American community, they're very money conscious, right? They're very conscious on how much they spend, how much they save, right? But I think oftentimes these communities, color, the buck kind of stops there, and unfortunately, there aren't certain safety nets in place, right? So it's difficult to try and convince someone to say, hey, if you have an extra $1,000, you should put it into the stock market as opposed to putting it into your savings account, right? Especially when they don't know what could potentially happen, right? So I think oftentimes in Black community members, there's almost a sense that you need to hold on to the capital that you generate in all ways, shapes, or form, right? And if you don't have that level of if you're not willing to necessarily say, hey, embrace, like, I could potentially lose this, you're limiting your upside. In a lot of that sense, and I think it definitely does hurt our community in a lot of ways. So I do really wish, in terms of literacy, there are ways in which you go into the community more. I really just explain to them, hey, there are ways in which you take very calculated risks in terms of your capitals. Like, you don't want to just throw it at every endeavor that you see, because not all real estate opportunities may necessarily be best, or not all stocks are going to be best, right? So it really is on the individual, like Devon said, to really just taking the time to learn what those resources are that are particularly right and correct for them, that'll allow them to grow money in a very sustainable fashion that you're not going to see. You're not going to become a millionaire overnight, right? You're not going to become the next Bill Gates, next Jeff Bezos. It's overnight, right? You really do have to figure out ways in which you can really build a healthy nest egg, and how do you want to grow your finances in a healthy manner.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah,
that's what we're trying to do with this show. We have music, and we're just trying to dangle all the information in front of our community without dragging them to the internet or that book.
Yeah.
Hoping it sticks. So excellent. So the first question is student loans. Obviously, they're a huge barrier for people into entry into the finance career, because when you hear that you have to take out all this debt, it might deter you from wanting to even pursue it. So according to Forbes, student debt in 2020 is now about $1.56 trillion. It's second to mortgages, which just shows how essential that Americans view it, because you have to have a place to live, and then next, they're considering that you have to have a degree. There's a 10.8% student loan delinquency rate, even with all the forbearance and student loan forgiveness programs out there. Without getting too personal about, you don't have to talk about your personal debt. If you want to, it's fine. I have no problem saying I have over $300,000 in student loans.
Bruh.
And I don't regret one penny, because I think you need it to get certain jobs. But what do you say to that person who's looking at that big sticker price and thinking, maybe I should go somewhere else?
Yeah, so for me, that was definitely a big consideration I had when I coached going to private institution, public institution versus I did a pretty substantial scholarship to go to Howard. I turned it down, and I ultimately really thought about it from, well, what is it that what is it that I'm ultimately looking to do, and what is my future potential earning power, right? And if you think about it from that perspective, and you really think about, okay, I'm willing to take a calculated bet on myself, right? That I'm willing to bet that after these 4 years, I could see myself being willing to earn X amount, right? At this entry level position, right? You can look at the numbers. The data's available. You can see like what an entry level position it will earn you, and you can kind of just really look at the numbers roughly and be able to say, okay, after 4 or 5 years, like you should be able to have paid. Granted, assuming this is all, I'm only speaking from the undergrad, because you really need to do the math there, but I wouldn't recommend you keep like high 6 figures levels undergrad alone, because those entry level positions are only going to command so much. But yeah, so really just think about it from that perspective, and I definitely do think, as an individual, I took on debt to go to attend my undergrad institution, and similar to yourself, I don't regret it at all. I think it was a fantastic choice, and my earning potential has reflected that, and I do think, and I often think that oftentimes that members of the Black community, there's a certain level of fear associated with debt. I do think at times it holds individuals back from really taking those large leaps, right? If you really do want to pursue a better life and change your circumstances significantly, going through those certain undergraduate programs will allow you to get into doors at certain positions that members of your family maybe have not been fortunate enough to experience in the past. So I definitely do challenge the audience to think critically about the way that they think about that and when they're selecting their university.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about the opportunity cost, right? I think you have to think about, okay, I'm going to take out X amount of dollars in student debt, but at the end of the day, as a result of going to this institution, I'll have a higher likelihood of getting into this position that I want to get into, which will pay me this amount of money. And over this number of years, I can pay back that student debt in full. So I think that you kind of just have to, once again, step back and do your own analysis as to, what you're looking to do, how you're going to pay off this debt, and whether or not going to one institution versus another is going to allow you to pay off that debt quicker. And I think that so personally, I'll give a little antidote. I'm thinking about pursuing an MBA. At some point in the next few years, and once again, that's a huge check out the door. It's $175,000, and you got to think about what that affords you in the long term and how you want to pay that back. And another person in my firm kind of gave me this antidote and said, look, if you think about the $150,000 over a 50-year career, yes, you should be able to achieve higher salaries as a result of getting the degree, and therefore you should be able to pay it off over the term of your career. And you just have to think about it. Like, is it worth going to, let's call it a top 5 institution versus a top 30 institution? One's free, one's not. Are those same doors going to be opened? And at the end of the day, will it allow you to get to where you want to get to? And so I think like Jared said, you got to take a bet on yourself and figure out what the best solution is for you. But I wouldn't necessarily be dissuaded from going to an institution because of the loans. I think that a lot of institutions will offer you the opportunity to get to a higher place than you probably would have been had you gone somewhere else. And so that's kind of the thought process you have to have, I think.
Okay. And I'm glad you two mentioned words like risk and bet on yourself, because it is a gamble. I have some classmates who have hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans like me, but unfortunately did not get certain types of jobs. So it's a risk, but great. And then the last question, just a personal one for people considering a career in corporate finance, which tends to be very demanding with either long hours or unpredictable hours. When it comes to your social life, dating, friends, hanging out, what would you say for that person who's hesitant because they want to have a great career, but they also value their personal life?
So I would say that you shouldn't let that dissuade you from ultimately pursuing your career objectives and goals. But you should be conscious of the fact that things will happen over the course of your career, and it really is. It's frustrating. It really is truly frustrating at times, because I have had dates canceled, events that I wanted to go to with friends that I couldn't attend, like last minute. Like, try to do everything you possibly can to make sure that this is okay. You clear like ahead of time. You schedule, so hey, this shouldn't happen. Something still comes up. So it does happen. I guess from my personal perspective, it's really just there are still boundaries that need to be set at times, right? That there are, even with your career, like your career is definitely a very important aspect of your life. I think there do come times in which you really need to set very clear expectations with your manager, with what you're going through. Say, hey, this is something that I can't miss. Right? This is something that I need to go to. And you really just have to express how much of a priority that is. Because other individuals will do it. They'll have different priorities, different stages in their career. I don't have kids, but with children, they make their children a priority and say, hey, I need to go to attend this event. And so while I think it's important to affirm in that, hey, like, just because I may not have children doesn't make what I'm going through is any less important than what somebody else is happening, right? And it's really just about developing that confidence to deliver that clear message to individuals that you're working.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balance. I think the first few years are probably the most difficult years because you will miss out on a ton of social obligations as a result of working late, and things pop up last minute and you're like, okay, I can't make this anymore. I have to push it back an hour or whatever. And there have been numerous times when I've had to, maybe it's a Thursday night date and it's at 7:30 and you say, okay, I'm going to go, but I got to come back to the office afterwards and crank out a couple more hours of work. And so you figure out how to make it work, and you kind of roll with the punches. And I think that at the end of the day, like Jared said, boundaries have to be set. There are certain things that are absolutely mandatory and certain things that can be rescheduled. And you kind of have to pick and choose your battles and figure out which ones are those events that are mandatory and need to be attended. And you have a conversation. I think that people are more than willing to accept, your explanation behind why you need to go to a certain event. As long as you get the work done at some point, I think people are pretty flexible on how you do it. Amira, funny enough, my girlfriend is a 3L at Fordham Law, so she knows the grind. And we were both in our first year, so she was a 1L and I was a first year, and so we understood that the only time we'd really get to see each other was Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening when we weren't studying. And so I think or when she wasn't studying and when I wasn't working. And so it's funny. I think that you figure it out over time and you figure out what your priorities are, and the grind never stops. So you just kind of got to roll with the punches.
Right. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate all of our 2053 fam. And don't forget, know your worth.
The more you work for the man, the less you gon' make. Harder you work for someone else, the more taxes you pay. Don't forget that lifestyle taxes keep us regulated. Have to make sure to keep our people educated. Solution to work smarter, not harder. Break the cycle and live unbothered. Turn income to wealth for our sons and our daughters. Apply to school without feeling too broke to go to college. Cause we're not making what 2/3 of these Karens would make. That's with no degree in trust funds that parents create. That can be you, just tune in and then you're on your way. When the time comes, tell me what they gon' say. Started from the bottom, got a slow start. Now we're getting educated, trying to spend our money smart. Let's just prove this news that's all so saddening. And make sure by 2053 it's not happening. Started from the bottom, got a slow start. Now we're getting educated, trying to spend our money smart. Let's just prove this news that's all so saddening. And make sure by 2053 it's not happening. Money flow through us, not to us. Let that sink in. Engage with people that always keep you thinking. Why people have the advantage cause of position. But financial knowledge, it's our obligation. So we created the show. We just want you to know how to build your health and wealth and how to watch it grow. Tune into the pod and the YouTube channel. No network 2053, then that's a no.
Right, because truthfully, before you really couldn't. It was new.
Oh, is this mine? Oh, thank you very much. Oh, it's heavy.
Now let me put this back. All right. Oh, this is what I meant, Jerome. This trim.
Yeah,
That's what I
but you know, it almost like a bronze look like from here because this is bronze. So bronze, yeah, it's not a lot of that at all. See, if you go back over. See, it almost has like a bronze look to it. So it'll blend right in.
Supposed to break these? That was a dumb question. It was a dumb question. Never mind.
They didn't give us. That's the one place they ain't gonna stereotype, because they didn't give us no forks. We had to eventually
I see there's none in the bag.
Do you want me to get you one? Or are you going to try it?
I was gonna try it.
All right. You should learn.
Is this how you do it?
Dad never taught y'all.
He did. He tried.